Hi everyone, I'm Richika Bindra, and today on #NoFilter we are talking about the world of hookup culture with our fabulous millennials. Stay tuned, everyone. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of #NoFilter. I'm very excited to be here with you today. We are talking about, I think, an issue that is really important, but at the same time, it's something that we hesitate to touch on. So hoping we can draw some light on it today. I'd like to start by introducing our fabulous guest panelist that is here. Her name is Ashley Hazard. She is a millennial and cultural youth speaker. She has done numerous work across the country and in different continents in terms of helping the youth with empowering confidence, etc. She is also an editor-in-chief of Skin Magazine, an online sex and cultural magazine which works to empower our bodies and our expression. I also have with us our fabulous teen panelists today, millennial panelists, I'm gonna say, Jacob, Nikki, and Elliot. Hi guys.
Hey,
see, I made you guys young. I called you guys teens, but you guys are more like millennials. And how can we forget our social media guru expert, Cassandra. Hi, Cassandra.
Hi, Richika. So as Richika said, the whole show is going to be on hookup culture. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything, make sure to tweet me at NoFilterRogers, and I'll make sure to read your question on air.
Thank you. All right, so Ashley, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We had Ashley on last season to talk about the issue of identity and finding ourselves. She was our first guest, and viewers across the entire city loved her. So we're really excited that you could come back and see us.
I'm so excited to be here.
Hookup culture.
Yes.
We get scared hearing the word, yet we all throw it around. Essentially, for millennials, what is hookup culture?
Hookup culture is this fun little buzzword that's being thrown around today, and it essentially describes the culture that we live in that is accepting and embracing of casual sexual encounters. So that can be anything from kissing to full-on one-night stands or sex.
And do you think hookup culture has always been there before? It's just because now we're sort of in a society where we're more viewed and more analyzed and more discussed. We kind of have coined it hookup culture, or is it something that's more into practice in this generation than before?
Absolutely. Personally, I think just viewing what's been going on in the world these days, it seems as if there's more going on these days. But actually, if you look back historically, you'll find that interestingly enough, millennials are statistically shown to have about 8 hookups within their lifetime. But baby boomers are at 10 or 11. So it was actually more
That's
in
crazy.
generations past than what it is currently going on. It's just that we're in such a visual medium right now where we're documenting everything online. We're seeing more in the world. And so it seems as if it's more present than it actually is.
And it's true. I read an article today and they said because millennials, for example, on a economic point of view and a social point of view, are so much more kind of in debt, or they're trying to kind of live with the higher standards of living. For example, a lot of them don't have places on their own. They live with their parents. How are they supposed to have these crazy hookup cultures that they're supposed to sort of be, being coined to have? So a lot of it is a little bit of an illusion as well. So I thought that was interesting. On my way, I said, well, is it true? Is it not? So I want to get you guys' opinion.
Oh, it happens.
Okay.
I'm just saying, okay, mom and dad you live with them, that doesn't mean they're always home.
Right, okay. So
Some mom and dads are okay.
So if hookup cultures are more casual and there's no expectation, is it because we fear sort of a commitment, or is it because millennials are like, I'm just gonna enjoy my life, I'm young, marriage is happening later, people are settling down later, so I can kind of take my time and kind of jump around almost in the way? Jacob, you're pondering.
Yeah, it's a shift in culture.
Okay.
When you see, 20, 30 years ago, if you weren't married at 20 and you didn't have, another significant partner and you weren't getting ready to have a kid, you were like, well, what's happening with you?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
And, I think when social media gets involved, other people and all people around are going to look at, how people move with their own physical body and emotions and things like that. And I think that shifts. So I think people's attitudes towards what's okay and what's not okay and what's seen as normal and not normal changes.
Right.
So I think we are seeing a change in culture, which is obviously great, because when you have the same of one thing forever, it's not cool.
Yeah,
you got to have
too
like
much.
some change, right?
Right. Nikki, you're laughing. Why?
He's right. I just also think in the generation we live in, it's very, I would say, over-sexualized. Like the idea of not being monogamous, the idea of being, out there, and exploring the world and exploring people and your sexuality is a very big thing. Like I've heard words I've never heard in my life before, like gender fluid, for the first time in the first couple of years and everything. So we're in a generation right now that is allowing people to explore their sexuality a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much.
I've learned so much in like the past 2 years. I'm like,
Getting wiser?
yeah, I've been living under a rock.
I think it's just, it's because, like, I totally agree with both of you. It's because it's just become a norm, right? Sex is talked about more on TV and the media. Mm-hmm. It's just become a part of our daily life, and people are more risque in a way. They're more interested in trying things out. I mean, compared to Europe, we're very prude, North America, but I think it's getting there, right?
Okay, Ashley?
I mean, you think about it, really, the millennials are one of the first generation who grew up with sex being such an accepted thing to be spoken about in the public eye, right? We grew up with, like, Madonna singing about Like a Virgin, everyone and their grandma reading 50 Shades of Grey. Like, these are casual conversations that are going on around the dinner table, and because of it, people are more comfortable expressing themselves, whether it's just verbally and how they talk about it, or whether it's how they express themselves with their friends, with their partners, with their hookups, whatever it may be.
It's funny you said 50 Shades of Grey, I just thought about it. When I went to watch that movie, the entire lineup was not women and their significant others or their boyfriends. It was women and their girlfriends and their moms and their sisters, and I'm like, you're going to watch this movie with your mom and sister? They're like, yeah, we love the story, we love Mr. Grey. And I'm like, okay, but like with your mom and sister? So you're right, there is a shift. There is sort of this understanding that we need to become more expressive. So if we're expressive in forms of art, if we're expressive on social media, if we're using communication, you know, like so freely with the fact that we have the internet and, you know, all these dating apps that are so much more accessible than before, why can't we be a little bit more, I guess we've come to a point where we're a little bit more selective. So we're kind of like, well, I don't need to make a lifetime commitment with a partner right away. You know, if I even believe in something like marriage, it doesn't have to be done, like you said, at 20. There isn't that ticking clock anymore, right? More and more people find past, I think, 26, 27, 28, it's like, okay, that's when they maybe start to consider it. Versus back in the day, we were 21, 22, you're like, oh my God, like, I'm single, like, how am I gonna be, you know, how am I gonna be married by 25? What am I gonna do? I'm gonna be so old. So I think there is a huge cultural shift. But at the same time, my question for you guys is, do you think it's only because of the fact that online dating has become so much more easier? Like, we have apps on our phone, right? Even, I would say, even 10, 20 years ago, you would still go home. You'd go on a computer. You would have to create a website, log on, go on a social media, like, you know, website, put your ID in and kind of create a profile. Yeah. It wasn't mobile with you 24/7. Today, I can leave home and have Tinder on my phone and continue, you know, building that relationship 24/7. Yeah. On the other side of the break, we're going to go into social media dating apps and if it really makes a difference in the world of hookup culture. Stay tuned, everybody, on #NoFilter. Welcome back, viewers, to this week's episode of #NoFilter. Before the break, we were talking about hookup culture and this idea of dating apps. Has it made it a little bit easier? Has it made hookup culture more accessible, more acceptable? So things like, guys, hot or not. A friend of mine the other day we were sitting for dinner and she's like, yeah, look at this. And she's like swiping through. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, what do you think? Hot or not? And I was like, I don't know, like neither? Is that an option? She's like, no. It's hot or not, or nothing. I'm like, oh, people actually put themselves out to be judged like that? And she's like, yeah, that's part of social media dating apps, right? Like, go on Tinder. You swipe right, I swipe left. Okay, we're not a match. You swipe right, I swipe right. So it's very physically, obviously as a culture, we've become more obsessed with our physical appearances. I think yesterday, CBC News was saying that millennials are more likely to get work done to themselves at a younger age than people were in generations before us. So I think taking that into account, the fact that we're so liberal, we have all these accessible dating sites. Where do you guys think that plays into play? Because for me, the way I look at it is, okay, back in the day, you'd have to be on MSN. It wasn't mobile. You couldn't take it with you necessarily. So there was almost a gap. There was a slower pace. Today, it's like, okay, well, you didn't reply me on Tinder, on to the next one. I'm on the bus and I can finish this. I'm on the go and I can, hot or not, Tinder. Is there anything else I'm like a new one that I don't know about?
I think it's just attention as a whole with all these apps
Yeah.
like Snapchat, 10-second videos, Vine, 6-second videos, Tinder, you just swipe left and right. So all these apps that are so quick to use and you only use it for a couple seconds have made us more prone to not wait as much and not really be into commitment. I mean, personally, I'm still old-fashioned into commitment, but just society-wise, because of these apps, we're in such a rush to get things done. And as you said, you don't reply to me, I'm done.
I don't know. Okay, I think that you're right. The apps just make things quicker. I don't think it's really changed the game other than the fact that the connections and what happen faster. Other than that, this was still happening. You just had to be a little more prompt. You needed to be a little more punctual. If I said, meet me, outside the school at 3 o'clock, there wasn't 3:15 because I wouldn't think you're showing up. I have no means of communicating with you, and there's no other way of meeting up with you. So why miss out on this one opportunity that I know for sure? Whereas Tinder allows you to have like 50 opportunities. All right, he's not coming, on to the next one. So I think this one just causes us or makes us more punctual beings, or non-punctual, I should say. Beings.
Ashley?
I think you're both kind of right in an interesting sense. It definitely has to do with our attention spans. Like, we're living in a fast-paced society, so having these apps, having everything so accessible, having it on our bodies, our attention spans are very quick, and so we're quickly sifting through people. So it makes these short-term relationships really easy, quick, on the go, whatever it may be. Funny enough, though, online dating, online apps, things like this actually work for long-term relationships as well. And it's working at an increasing pace. I remember when I first started doing research on relationships, the facts that we were being told was it was like 1 in 4 relationships, long-term relationships, were found online. This was back in 2009. Now, in 2016, we're at 1/3 of all relationships, long-term relationships, are happening online. That's because people are having conversations that matter quicker and sooner. As you're saying, like, yes, you have to be on point. You have to be getting back to people faster and faster. But you're also having in-depth conversations faster and faster for those who are looking for it. So the hookup is there, but the relationship is there as well.
So I think we're coming to sort of a medium. We're reaching a middle point slowly and surely.
Exactly.
So one day someone's going to be like, I met my husband on Tinder. And I'm going to be like, that's amazing.
Tinder marriages are a thing.
Tinder marriages are a thing. I have a really friend of mine who met her partner on Tinder, and they're doing great. And like, I was like, it's not just a hookup. She's like, no, like I actually like him. We went to grab drinks. We ate. It was really good.
Yeah.
My twist is now that we're more expressive, Jacob, for example, with pride, with LGBTQ, with rights that are being more discussed and more accepted in society, do you think now it's also easier for them to kind of express how they feel and not have this pressure in terms of, I wouldn't even say hookup culture, sexuality, and in terms of obviously hooking up?
Okay, so if you look at York Region, if we're going to talk about York Region,
Yeah.
I know that we have a very wide viewership. York Region has 9 municipalities, 1.1 million people. We're a very spread out region. So when it comes to meeting people, and when you apply that to LGBT, you have to understand that there are going to be a lot of people who aren't out about their sexuality. So then you have to take into account how are they going to meet people.
Right.
So the online aspect has always been an LGBT person's best friend. But before that, it was more or less, you had to kind of get the hint.
Right.
And then if you got the hint, then, that's when you could move forward. But then the hookup couldn't happen at home. It couldn't happen anywhere in the public. So it had to happen somewhere secret, right?
Yeah.
So I think when you look at this, I think it's very important that, the social aspect is here and available for people. It has changed how we interact, but I think a lot of people use it. And I mean, personally, I met my boyfriend on Grindr, which is a gay hookup. And we're coming up for our 2 years this November.
Grindr long-term relationships.
That's right.
There
That's
is
right.
a
So
light at
there's
the
a
end of
hope,
hookup
but the
culture.
thing is that doesn't change how we might interact with other people. We might just be we're a committed relationship. We're not open, but sometimes we might do things with our friends, and we might think that that's okay, but someone else who might be LGBT might not think that's okay,
Right.
and that can apply to a heterosexual relationship too. So I mean, there's a very big shift. But I can definitely tell you that the social media aspect to LGBT is huge.
Amazing. So from the word social media, I just remembered, Cassandra, I can see all the tweets buzzing. So tell me, what do we have?
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about people just hooking up or actually leading to a serious relationship. So we have a tweet here from Joe, and he said, do you think teenagers should be to a serious relationship before post-secondary. And I want to ask you guys, it doesn't necessarily have to be post-secondary, but when do you think someone should start being committed and hookup culture should just end?
Cass, why don't you tackle this? Why don't we put the social media guru to start this conversation?
Honestly, I think hookup culture, if you're not ready for a serious relationship, just keep going with hookup culture for as long as you can.
Yes.
Cassandra, if your mother is watching this,
I know, but
she's going to call me.
yeah, but once, you know what, everyone knows and everyone's ready at their own time to be in a serious relationship. So whether it's in your 20s, whether it's in your 30s, everyone, whatever makes you happy.
No, she's right. One great thing about hookup culture is because it's so fast-paced, you're meeting so many different people, and you're learning different things. You're learning what you like, what you don't like. The more people you meet, the more you can figure out yourself and better understand what you're looking for in a partner.
I think it also comes down to your experience, right? When you,
So true.
I mean, every person's different. Like my boyfriend's like introvert, I'm extrovert.
Yeah.
No one thinks we work together, but we actually do. But the thing is, there are things that, you know, still don't work with us. And, you know, I'm still getting used to that. But there's other things that like I love about him. And the thing is, I find that, you know, if you meet one person, you call that person the love of your life, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think you should definitely meet more than one person because everyone has a special experience to share with you.
Exactly.
So
There's so
true.
much we can learn from each other.
I don't think you put a time limit on that.
No, and you shouldn't. I
No.
think you should take it as it comes. So everyone's experience is different. On the other side of the break, we're going to talk about some concerns with hookup culture. Stay tuned, everybody, on #NoFilter. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to #NoFilter. We were talking about hookup culture. So I know we spoke about some of the good things. We spoke about some of the ways it's changed. It's made it easier to communicate. My question, I'd like to direct the rest of the conversation a little bit to some of the concerns, I think, with hookup culture. What I love about #NoFilter is we're able to kind of give a full landscape view to our audiences, and we're able to touch on some things that are sometimes difficult to listen to, and sometimes I think they need to be had. With hookup culture, we're more open with our sexuality. With that comes health concerns, right? Obviously, the more exposed you are, the more you're getting involved with somebody else, your body's constantly in touch. There's obviously risks that can come with it, like STIs that go around, STDs that can stay permanently. And I think in a way, with millennials, the good thing is we're able to discuss things more. We're more open with our health. We're aware we need to go, you know, versus years before, if something was wrong, you didn't know how to go. You didn't know how to go to your mother, or you didn't know what to say to the doctor. People would, you know, I was doing some research on my way, and people were writing they were embarrassed to go to their own doctors. I'm like, but it's your doctor, right? Like for us, we're like, what do you mean? We're paying our doctor. The healthcare system's paying. Like we walk in almost like we own that space. Like we're entitled to, you know, an appointment. And so with hookup culture, we're meeting so many different people, Ashley. How do we take care of this? You never know. And so what are some of the things you recommend for millennials today in this world?
The number one thing for millennials to know in this world is protect yourself as much as possible. Use protection. If you're going to be hooking up with people, whether it's one person or multiples, unless you're in a serious long-term relationship, make sure you're protecting yourself. STIs are a very real thing, and whether it's the physical elements that affect you or the psychological ramifications, both can have negative impacts on you. So you want to make sure you're looking after you most.
I think
Jacob?
something that you should also remember is that to take away the stigma.
Yeah.
The first thing is to get rid of that, because our society and culture is so good at stigmatizing things.
Yes.
I think, you know, being able to openly walk into a clinic, no matter who you are, who you like to date, who you like to, you know, have sex with, I think it's important that you know your body and you know that there's a place to go. And you know, whether you're in York region or Peel region or Toronto, there are always places for you to go to get checked for free that is paid by the taxpayer, and it's all for our health. It's important.
It's
really
about
important. But I
being
mean, it's
aware.
important about, you know, knowing that you can go into a place and know your health, because your status is the most important, because your status is your health.
Yeah, absolutely. Elliot?
And even before that, even before going to the doctor and all that, you should be ready for sex. You shouldn't be pressured into it. And I feel like that's a huge thing, because consent is important. And it's such a huge thing with the societal shift in being more open sexually, a lot of people are being more pressured into being with more people and trying things out, and they might not necessarily be ready.
And I think another thing is with hookup culture, people, and a lot of young girls don't necessarily realize it doesn't have to necessarily be intercourse, right? It can
Yeah.
just be being very intimate closely to somebody. You can still get any sort of STI. And so what I love about our generation is that when I went to school when I was younger, we didn't have such, deeply educated like sex ed classes, right? Where our parents would educate us. We'd know a little bit later.
See,
We'd hear
that's
from
the problem.
people,
That's the
and we've
problem.
always
Our
got the
parents.
conservative. Exactly, we got the conservative view
My
of
mom.
it.
Yeah.
And kids today, they're 14 and 15. I was talking to someone the other day, and her daughter's 14 and 15, and they have more intense vaccination programs in school. They have, for example, the HPV vaccine.
Yeah.
Whether you're pro or not, but there is now tools. If you want to take something and you believe it, it's there.
Yeah.
At our time, it was less, because to discuss this in school was like, ooh, now we're having classes, and there's more at a younger age we're discussing it. And some parents are uncomfortable, but I think as we look at it as an overall landscape, there's a conversation going. And I think that's important because we're beginning to hide away from the stigma.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, something that I just wanted to say, and sorry about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at our sex ed curriculum. Why do you think when it comes to a school board, for instance, choosing what our students learn, because they have specialists that look at where our society is and,
Yep.
the millennials, and we look at, what do we need to be talking about that we haven't talked about? And the thing is, when it comes to parenting, everyone has the right to tell their kid what they think that they should be doing, and I think that's very important because that's what makes a good parent a parent, and also a child that knows what they're doing, right? But I think it also comes down to the reason why the schools educate is because when parents fail to educate,
Absolutely.
where's the kid at that point? And I think, a lot of parents get upset, well, why didn't the sex ed curriculum ask me what I think about it? Well, that's the reason. If you don't tell your kid what's out there, they're going to find out maybe in the wrong way, and that's not what you want to happen, because then that's when we have issues with STIs and other diseases. And you know what? I think it's smarter to. I mean, a disease never ever discriminates against anyone. It will go and it will plant itself in you, and it will make your life a living nightmare.
Thank you.
But I mean, it's important that we know that. And the thing is, you never know what your kid's gonna do. And the
That's
thing
what I'm
is,
saying.
I think
It's true. It's so true. You have to be
we're
careful.
not all out there to just hook up and
Yeah.
things like that. I think it's important that we understand that everyone moves at a different pace, and
I
I think we don't want to dilute the conversation where we make this seem like, oh, we're all so sexual, we all
No.
hook up. That's not what it is. It's about understanding what comes with this
It's about
responsibility.
understanding that everything comes with a tag to it. Everything comes with pros and cons. As a generation, no generation is going to be perfect. We can sit here and find flaws with the generation before us and the baby boomers and etc. I think today's generation, as we said, there is a more stronger exposure to hookup culture, but at the same time, there are people looking for long-term commitments. And I think Jacob put it really well. Whatever you're doing it at your own pace.
Yes.
Being alert, being aware, and taking care of yourself, I think, is really, really important.
Yes.
I know, Cassandra, we have a tweet, so do you want to tell us what our viewers are tweeting us?
Okay, so now that we're definitely touching on a more serious side of things, I have a tweet from Marion, and she said, "Are there problems with consent now that hookup culture is popular with the millennials?" I think this is something very important
Really,
that we should be
really,
touching on.
I think the word consent has always been the same, but I think people are beginning to interpret it very differently, right? And I think that's something that can get a little bit tricky too. What is consent to you versus what is consent with me? And when we go into our legal system, so many cases end up when they walk out of the courtroom, one person doesn't win versus the other because the judge always asks one question, well, that's your version of consent.
Yeah.
That's their version. So I think from a legal point of view, the whole idea of consent cannot be, unfortunately, pinpointed. It's just one of the paradoxes of our social system.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think? Really quick, Ashley?
I mean, it's one of the biggest pros and the biggest cons of the hookup culture today and the culture that we live in is that everything's kind of ambiguous. So when it comes to consent can be ambiguous. You want to make sure you're communicating. I think that's the key, whether it's communicating with yourself, with what you're comfortable with, as well as communicating with your partner in terms of, are they okay? Are they happy? Are they feeling this? Whether it's just chatting, whether it's hooking up, whether it's kissing, at any stage of it, just do little check-ins here and there. Make sure that both people are on board, or how many people you're with. Just make sure everyone's having a good time.
Such a good idea.
Yeah.
Have that check-in every so often that you can. On the other side of the break, we are going to talk about some of the more interesting aspects of hooking up culture and some of the spots that apparently I read we're in the city. Stay tuned, everybody.
Hookup spot.
Welcome back to Hashtag No Filter, everybody. Before the break, we were talking about hookup culture, some of the cons, some of the concerns. And before the break, I mentioned hookup spots. Okay, so I'm old school, so I don't get this. What is this thing about certain spots in the city are hookup spots and not? Like, do you not just go to the movies anymore? Like, do you not just go clubbing with our friends? I'm really confused. Somebody give me some light on this.
We could call it that.
Okay, so that's okay.
It all starts at the movies.
It all starts. See, it always
movie
started
in
at
the
the
club.
movies.
It's not even the movies anymore. Netflix and chill. You don't even have to go to the
Right,
movie
so
theater.
Netflix and
Yeah,
chill.
it's a very
I
good
found
thing.
out in a very funny way what Netflix and chill was because my friend's like, yeah, I'm going to Netflix and chill in this guy's place. I'm like, that's really cool. On your first, second date, you guys are gonna watch a movie and chill. And then, of course, the conservative Ruchika had to get educated, as always. So that's fine. I got educated then, and then I got, I was like, oh, this is the new code words. I don't know the trendy words. So yeah, Netflix and chill, hookup spots. We've almost created this illusion of a culture. The other day I was reading sort of like there's all these quotes on Instagram, and they're more about like, if he didn't call me back, well, bye then, and see you next. Like, it's very almost women empowering, where it's like hookup culture is great. Like, if not him, there's the next one, and if not him, there's the next one. And we sort of have this thing where for women it's okay now.
Yeah.
So actually, how does that kind of work?
I think
Because, sorry to interrupt, but back in the day, you would be shamed.
Yes.
Right?
No, absolutely. I think thanks to some amazing trailblazers, like all the way back to Betty Friedan, Gloria Steinem, Emma Watson now, you have these great feminist and women speakers who are coming out and talking about women's experiences and giving women as a collective a voice, which is giving the individuals voices. So now women are more vocal about what they want, how they want it, why they want it. I mean, you see things like we're closing the orgasm gap, a weird example, but back in the day, about 10 years ago, it was like 40 to 80. And now we're looking at 89% female orgasms. We're looking at women who are getting what they want in relationships. We're looking at women who are speaking about what they want. And I think it's, there's definitely an empowering aspect to it.
Cassandra, we have a tweet. Read it to me.
This one matches perfectly to what you guys were talking about. So this girl, Clea, tweeted in, if a guy hooks up with a bunch of girls, it's okay. But if a girl hooks up with a bunch of guys, why is it viewed differently? And I think this is a big issue in our society that when guys are hooking up with a lot of girls, they're seen as like, yeah, good for you, buddy. But if a girl hooks up with a bunch of guys, she's kind of shamed for it. So what do you guys think? Do you think this has changed?
It's like basically going back to saying you're a man, that macho man image, right?
Yeah.
That macho man image has always been there in society when the more, tough you look, the beefer you look. We used to have this physical idea of men that's finally coming to change and be, we're accepting different bodies as we are with women. At the same time, it used to be the more women you would get or the more, women you could pass. It was like, oh my God, look at me. Everyone wanted to be like that popular guy, right? That had all the girls. And I think it's never been different where for women, it's always been something that'll be judged upon. And that's where the gender inequality, I think, whether you're in hookup culture today, hookup culture 20 years ago, I think it's always been there. So how do you guys, millennials, I know you guys have friends that are in this hookup culture, maybe you guys are, where do you guys see this dynamic?
Don't get me started on macho.
I definitely think it has changed. In high school, I can see where that whole tweet, that idea that like guys are getting, the high five on the back. Yeah, because at that age they're seeing girls like you should be a little more reserved, conservative. Listen to me, I stepped into a university and it was like a dollhouse. Like I had no idea that, people could be so free. And I'm so happy in the sense that it's like, it kind of has pulled back. And the one thing I can say I'm thankful about the over-sexualization of everything today is that it's allowing women to be free. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people who look down on women for that, but at the same time, if she's living her life and she's enjoying what she's doing, she's happy with her body and the way she's going about it, a lot of people don't really care. At least I'm not too interested in what it is someone else is doing. I think the older you get, the more you begin to kind of care less about who's been with everyone and more of what's going on in your own world.
Yeah.
So unless you have an issue specifically so that you're dating a gentleman or a female that is very out there and has made their rounds, then I think that's really neat. That's more when people seem to have an issue rather than I guess back in the day, like in high school, I probably cared, but I don't really care what you do now.
Okay, Elliot?
I think, honestly, you do you. If you want to be with a bunch of guys, go ahead. If you want to be in a relationship, go ahead, right? And it's not up to others to judge, and people still do it, right? People always judge. We're naturally just biased to one side. But the point is, if you want to do it, go ahead. As long as you're ready for it, then you can do what you want.
Well, I read, and I've actually seen this, that more and more as we're getting into an acceptance of sexuality and hookup culture, men have become a little bit less judgmental on women in terms of, shaming them or naming them. But women to women shaming, studies have showed, are actually going up.
Yeah.
Even though we have this freedom and empowering each other, someone will be like, oh my God, yeah, she was with him, and him. It's almost women to women, whereas before it was the guy being like, dude, I already had that, or dude, I know her, and I know her history. So where do you guys, I find it's a very funny paradox, because in one way we see women empowering each other and go girl, and we're all for it, and we want to see each other grow and get amazing. But at the same time, when it comes to something like that, I still see a little bit of that kind of catty judgment that women do towards each other.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't speak for women.
No,
I mean,
you can't, Jacob.
I might have a feminine side. I mean, everyone's got one. But I think what you have to think is, like, look at Tinder. It's so competitive. So if you look at these girls, it's just all competition. And I think you'll see that with guys too. And I think that's where you look at who treats who like meat.
Right.
And I think that's where we need to focus the conversation, where, why are people, treating each other like a piece of or an object or something like that, when, there are connections to be made, but, and you can make as many as you want, but I think, people are taking it and, throwing it all over the place. And, I think that's where you have, like, people calling, guys predominantly saying to girls, if one girl is hooking up with lots of guys, they're saying, you're this or you're that. And I think,
The name calling.
Why isn't it happening with guys? Well, I think no one's gone back at the guy and say, well, you're this. Right. I think, if everyone started saying, well, you're that, then next thing you know, the culture would change. So I think we've got to change the culture.
Okay, Ashley?
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting because we do live in such an accepting society where all of these things are much more in the open, but we're still painting everyone with kind of the same paintbrush. Whereas you have a lot of individuals who are like, oh, this is what's right for me, this should be what's right for you. But just like with diets, learning styles, how we show love, like, everyone's unique. We're individuals. We base our choices off, like, nature, nurture, lifestyle, what we, like, preference and our values. And it's not going to be the same for everyone. So I think it's important that we start a culture that talks about this more, that talks about preferences, because that's all it is. It's sexual preferences, it's lifestyle preferences.
Getting the conversation going, I think, in whatever way it is important to start talking. I think we're finally at a culture where we're open. We're able to sit on a show like today and create a medium where we allow people to hear different views and different thoughts, right? Some which are comfortable, some which are uncomfortable, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a discussion to happen. On the other side of the break, we're going to talk about the role social media has played in hookup culture. Hashtag on the other side of the break. Was that cool? Am I cool? You're so Hi, everyone. Welcome back to hashtag No Filter. Our panelists are driving me absolutely crazy. I'm kidding. Okay, Toronto, we have all these amazing tweets coming in. I want to thank you and the GTA. Cassandra, really quick, which tweet can we look at really, really fast as we're nearing the end of the break?
Okay, so we got a tweet in, and it says, how do you think hookup culture influences how teens define relationships? So I think we can bring in the factor that dating is a lot different now than it used to be. I mean, like, back then, the guy used to come to your door, bring you flowers, everything was a lot slower. Like, how rapidly do you think the culture has changed now?
I mean, flowers still come.
But that reminds me of that picture. It's like it's like a GIF, and it's like something like your bae messages you and they're on the highway and they message you, oh, I'm home alone, and then the car swerves and everything comes.
So for a lot of our a little bit non-millennial viewers, bae is before anybody else. Some people call it bacon and eggs, but it's supposed to be a sweeter way for baby. So it means before anybody else. So kind of like your significant other.
Yeah.
Listen, and I'm not trying to say this in like a sexual way, but you're not getting any of this sugar if you don't know how to court me. So
Yes.
I'm still
Yes.
very like, I'm so pro hookup culture, but at the same time, honey, like, you just better know how to come to my front
And so
door.
you mean in terms
doors.
of the
Like,
etiquettes of
yeah.
opening the doors and having a little bit of that
Have some
old
manners.
school
Yeah.
manners,
For
right?
sure.
And I think that's really important to say. Hookup culture doesn't have to be this dramatized, vision that it's become with social media of one person the next day Netflix and chill. Sometimes
Exactly.
hookup culture is I'm
It can be
getting
a
to know you.
beautiful thing.
Yeah,
You're the
I've-
same person.
I've gotten to know some amazing people. Like that's what somebody can say. I've gotten to know some amazing people in the right way. It doesn't have to be. I think the way it's been portrayed, there are extremes in every case, and I think there's balances too, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what when I think about sort of this situation, I think it's important that we look at both.
Yeah.
That level of respect you also have for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
for me, it's just like, if this is what it's gonna be, oh, you're gonna respect me.
I'm exactly like you. I like, not to be like catered to, but I mean, I like treating women with respect. If I take a girl on a date, I want it to be formal. I don't want it to just be like, hey, let's go. Like, and I don't expect anything at the end. I just want to be the way that I
You
am.
want to be
Yeah.
close with somebody.
yeah.
Absolutely, that's so cute. But he's totally right. It's all about authenticity and communication.
We need like a little heart here on the
It's a rare
table.
breed. No,
Thank
I'm
you.
ready.
Thank
We
you.
need a
I'll try.
heart on the table. It's like the Staples button, and you press it and the
I
hearts
have
fly
a
all over
really
the screen.
interesting question that I want to ask you guys.
Yeah.
So, as a generation, we're really communicative. We trust each other. We talk about things, hookup culture, health,
Yeah.
where are we going, etc. Dating, moving on. How do we speak about this to our parents? Like, for example, if you live at home with your mom, it's like, hey, mom, on Sunday, Tom is joining me for dinner. And then how do you tell your mom, hey, mom, in 2 weeks, it's Frank who's joining me for dinner? Like, how are those conversations happening now? Because before, it was a different way, right? That the conversations were happening. How are they happening now?
I think we're just smarter about who we're bringing in. And I
Okay.
think it's just not the cutest or the classiest to be like someone's coming to the dinner table every night.
Okay.
I think you just need to be a little more selective, and some people just don't need to be known. So your parents don't need to know that.
Swiss LA knows a couple of them, but then home knows like the main,
Exactly.
the
Like
main
the
one.
potential
special.
of
Bay. Home knows like the rotisserie dinner, but them sides, the potatoes, the broccoli, and I don't know what that is over there, gravy.
So do you
That's
think
your best
then
friends.
our parents are more okay with commitment being something that's a bit later, or do you think they're a little bit more still stuck on that ideal mindset? Do you think they're opening up as well?
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
patience.
Sorry.
No, you go.
I think it depends, right? Because they're old-fashioned parents that have immigrated and they still have their values, right? But there are also parents who have come here and they've, assimilated, right? Is that the right word?
Yes.
Just checking. And they're comfortable with it. And then there are parents that are born here and they understand it right from the get-go, so they're okay with it. So I think it's a case-by-case basis. But generally speaking, I think they're more open.
Ashley, how do we have that communication? How do we build that openness now to tell them, okay, I'm not necessarily, the guy I'm going to be with today may not be the guy I'm going to walk down the aisle with. How do girls have these conversations? Because more and more of them are, 24, 25, 26 is now like, it's normal to not have a serious relationship, and it's not expected, as we said at the start of the show, it used to be.
Yes.
So how do you kind of get your parents into being okay with that they're not going to get their grandkid by the time you turn 30? Like,
Oh my God.
listen, my close friend just turned 30, and forget a grandkid, like, she and I still need to know how to straighten our hair on time and go. So, like, not that I'm saying I'm 30, I'm still younger, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We have a lot more we need to
Aren't
do.
you pleasant?
Mom, dad, patience is a virtue.
No, our generation, life is being delayed a little bit because we're focusing on so many other things. There's so many other things that are stimulating us and getting our attention and making us work like more. We're such a goal-oriented generation. We're constantly pursuing our careers and our dreams, and it's natural that we don't necessarily have time to have a serious commitment right now. We're not focusing on having children. We don't need to be.
Probably jobs and traveling that suck up most of our times.
100%.
Jobs with our hobbies and then traveling. I mean, you might not want to do that with somebody who, is a long term, but you might also want to.
Yeah, 10,000%. And I think the key is when talking to your parents is just try to be honest with them embrace the awkwardness. It's going to be awkward. I remember like tiptoeing around my mom with these conversations for a really long time. I think it took me like 2 or 3 years to get on a level playing field, and now we talk about everything, literally everything. She's like my best friend. And it's because we kind of like eased through that transition, and I eased her into it. Awkward conversations. They had the first sex conversation with you. You have to have the first hookup conversation with them. It's only fair.
Yeah.
But once they kind of start to understand it and see it and you explain it a little bit, I think.
And they see that you know where you are. And I think
Yes.
you nailed it by saying we are a goal-oriented culture.
Yeah.
Everything we want it now. We want to achieve it. We want to attain it ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're no longer in a culture where we want things given to us. You know, back in the day, it was like, well, I have my dad's factory and I have my mom's, you know, empire. Now it's like, that's great. I want to build my own.
Yeah.
How do I do
Yeah.
it myself? How do I, you know, get into this space by myself? On the other side of the break, we are going to wrap up our show by talking about some last-minute tweets that have come in, some key points that we have taken away. And where do we think hookup culture is going to go in the next 10 to 15 years? Stay tuned, everybody. I'm Rich Kapindra, and this is #NoFilter. Hi, everybody. On the last segment of #NoFilter, we are going to talk about some of the main things we wrapped up in our show. Where do we see hookup culture going in the next 10 to 15 years? Cassandra, I see you have this tweet that's shining through, so let's take one last tweet for today. And I just want to thank all our viewers across the GTA. They are so amazing with tweeting us. We really, really appreciate it, and we're glad we can have the conversations that you guys want us to talk about.
Okay, so we just got a tweet in from Daniel, and he said, how would you deal with it if your friend calls you and tells you they have contracted an STI or something like that? So this is a conversation that I think is really important for teens to have with their friends, because like you guys were mentioning, not everyone feels comfortable talking to their parents about this. So if you can develop a good friend group, it's good to like support each other, especially through a time like that.
Okay, so I'll start the conversation because everyone's looking at me. Thank you for this tweet. I think it's a really good question to have. Regardless of your friend calling you, I think the most important thing that I find, you know, being a millennial is understanding that you can have this conversation and it's okay to have a conversation. And if you're not comfortable with your mom, if you're not comfortable with your sister, if you're not comfortable with your friend, I always recommend this, go to the doctor. They are there for you. There is privacy for a reason, and they are probably the best people to first get you the assurance, the guidance, and see the step in the direction you need to know. Because your friend can console you, and that's amazing, and your parents can take you there if you know you're under a legal age, and these things happen. It's a part and parcel of life. But I think being aware that I need to go to the right person, I need to go to the doctor. And I think in Canada, we're so fortunate. We have clinics that, you know, you can go to that's paid for with your Medicare and healthcare system. You can go to private clinics, you know, you have, if you're paying for private insurance, some people have vaccines and different things covered to help you. And I think understanding that you need to go first thing. And yeah, guys, take the stage. What do you guys think?
The number one thing I would tell my friend if they did go to a clinic and received a diagnosis is it is not the end of the world. I mean, we have this giant fear that STIs and STDs and everything else are just these big looming things that are going to end your life, but they don't. There are millions of people living with them day in and day out, and some of them, yes, they can have negative ramifications, some of them have treatment, but none of them change who you are as a person. You're still ultimately you, and that's the most important thing that I would at least focus on when talking to someone with it.
And you can't really change something that you can't control. Right, so a quote from my idol, Celine Dion. She said, there's 2 days in the world that you can't control, yesterday and tomorrow. So you really have to make the most of today. You know, and if you have such an issue, you talk to the person that you trust most, right? Even if it's a friend. You know, I've had friends that have come to me with that, and I've helped them out. And it's just about moral support, you know?
And I think it's also, moral support is one thing, but like you said, it's about being alert about today. So you can't change what has happened, but you can educate yourself.
Yeah.
Get educated. Take the time to say, okay, this happened.
Yes.
What am I missing to know? What should I know? What am I gonna change for next time? In whatever reason. Sometimes you can. It's life and it happens. But I think the conversation that you should be having with your friends is communicate to them, assure them, and remind them to get educated. Be aware of what's going on. Your body is very, very, I think, important. And I think we need to realize that. Nikki, Jacob?
I think Daniel should take his best friend or his friend to the clinic, be a really good friend, and the support's
Be there for the support.
You don't have to even show your health card. It's as simple as that, and it's free, and you don't have to take your parents either.
Amazing. Nikki?
Don't do too much Googling.
Don't.
Yes, do not self-diagnose yourself to all the hypochondriacs across
Google
the world.
doctors, and don't get me wrong, there are times we've been spot on, like we've been able, but honestly, I mean, I don't mind Googling because sometimes you might be freaking out over nothing. There are other hypochondriacs in the world. But sometimes you do need to just call someone that you honestly trust. I've been in the clinics all the time, and I'm just sitting there like, don't worry, we're gonna get through this. Like, it's gonna happen. So find someone you trust, head to the doctors, and get it over with. The sooner you know, the better you are. You deal with it, and you move on.
And I think honesty with your next partner.
Yeah.
If it is an sorry?
And previous.
And previous.
And previous. If it is an infection that you have gotten from someone before, have the discussion. Hey, maybe you gave this to me. I'm not sure. This is what happened. This is how I've treated it.
Yeah.
Hey, this is where it's going. Hey, this is something I had before. I don't have anymore. Hey, this is something I have. Whatever the case is, some of them can be solved. Some of them go away with no long-term ramifications, and some do stay with you. But at the end of the day, it shouldn't change who you are. Really quickly, we have about 60 seconds left. Our show always goes so fast. It just kills me. I wish we could have a forever long chat, but
Can I just
my
throw
viewers
this
will
out
kill
there?
me. Yes.
Get tested.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Some things
so
don't
important.
show up right away. So like every couple of months, like if you know you're active, every 3 to 4 months,
follow
every
the
6
health,
months, just get tested. Who
Health
cares?
Ontario guidelines, they're there for you. They're there to support you. Where do you guys see hookup culture in the next 10 years? The generation after.
Hopefully more friendly.
Yes.
Okay. One word. I
Accepting.
need one more. 'cause we gotta
Accepting.
go. Accepting.
Continuing.
Continuing. Okay. So Elliot thinks it's going to continue. I think it's just going to go back to the olden days of flowers at the doorstep and
I
calling
wish.
each other. But I'm just old school. It's been great chatting with all of you across GT and Toronto today. Thank you so much for paying attention to #NoFilter and Hookup Culture. Don't forget to follow us on social media and tweet us. Thank you, Cassandra. Have a good night, everyone.
Hashtag.